My mother-in-law told our wedding guests I was an abusive partner. Then my fiancée took the microphone and said 5 words that shattered her. I was 30 seconds into my wedding reception when I realized my marriage might not make it to the first dance. The moment happened so fast I almost missed it. The shift in the room's energy, the way conversations died mid-sentence, the sudden weight of 200 pairs of eyes turning toward the head table where my soon-to-be mother-in-law stood with a microphone in her hand and tears streaming down her face. "I can't stay silent anymore," Patricia Whitmore said, her voice cracking with what sounded like genuine anguish. "Not when my daughter is about to legally bind herself to someone who has hurt her, who continues to hurt her." My stomach dropped. My fiancée Olivia grabbed my hand under the table, her fingers ice cold. I looked at her, searching for an explanation, but her face had gone pale, her jaw set in that way it does when she's about to explode. Around us, the reception hall, decorated with thousands of dollars worth of flowers and fairy lights, had transformed into a courtroom, and I was the accused. I'd been with Olivia for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and planning this wedding for nearly a year. We'd met at a medical conference in Seattle where she was presenting research on pediatric cardiology, and I was there representing the nonprofit I'd founded for childhood cancer survivors. The connection was instant. She loved my passion for advocacy. I loved her brilliant mind and wicked sense of humor. Our relationship had been the kind of healthy, communicative partnership I'd always wanted, the kind I'd watched my own parents model for 32 years. We moved in together after 6 months, got a golden retriever named Biscuit after a year. I proposed on a hiking trip in the mountains, no audience, just us and the sunset. Her parents seemed supportive, if a bit distant. Her father, Richard, was a corporate lawyer who barely spoke. Her mother, Patricia, was all smiles and southern hospitality, but there was something calculating in her eyes I couldn't quite pin down. Olivia had warned me her mother could be difficult, but I'd assumed she meant the usual mother-in-law stereotypes: boundary issues, wedding planning drama, unsolicited parenting advice. I had no idea what Patricia Whitmore was actually capable of. "I've seen the bruises," Patricia continued, and the room erupted in gasps. "I've heard the phone calls where she's crying, apologizing for things that aren't her fault. I've watched my daughter become a shell of who she was." She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking. "I have evidence. Photos, text messages, voice recordings of late-night calls where she begs me not to tell anyone because she's afraid of what will happen." My mind raced through every interaction we'd had, every argument, every stressed moment during wedding planning. Olivia had bruised her shin badly last month tripping over Biscuit's water bowl. She'd been stressed about her research grant proposal and had called her mother a few times in tears about work pressure. But Patricia was twisting everything, reframing our normal relationship struggles into something sinister. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is insane," I said, my voice barely steady. "Olivia, tell them this isn't true." Olivia stood slowly, and for one horrible moment I thought she might actually go along with her mother's delusion. Then I saw her face, not scared, not confused, but absolutely furious. She walked to where her mother stood, took the microphone from her hand with a gentleness that seemed almost dangerous, and turned to face our guests. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. "Mom," Olivia said, her voice eerily calm, "you need to sit down now." Patricia reached for the microphone. "Honey, I know you're scared, but you don't have to protect." Olivia held the microphone away, her other hand raised. "The bruise you photographed?" Her voice was clinical, detached, the voice she used when presenting research findings. "From my golden retriever, the crying phone calls? About the grant proposal that determines my entire career trajectory. The evidence you've compiled is a fantasy you constructed because you can't handle the fact that I'm happy with someone you don't control." The room shifted again, murmurs of confusion replacing the shocked silence. Patricia's face flushed red. "You don't know what you're saying. You're traumatized, That's when Olivia said the 5 words that would haunt Patricia Whitmore for the rest of her life. She looked directly at her mother, her voice clear and unwavering, and said, "I know about your embezzlement scheme." The microphone nearly dropped from her hand as she watched her mother's face drain of color. For 3 seconds, maybe 5, nobody breathed. Then Patricia laughed, a shrill, desperate sound. "That's absurd. You're clearly so desperate to—" But Olivia was already pulling out her own phone, swiping to something she'd clearly prepared. "I've been working with the FBI for 6 months, she said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. "The charity foundation you run? The one for underprivileged children's education? You've been skimming donations for years, $300,000 into offshore accounts. I found the first discrepancy when I helped you with your taxes last year, and I couldn't let it go." She looked at our guests, many of whom were major donors to Patricia's charity. I reported it in March. They've been building the case since then. I was supposed to testify next week, but you couldn't help yourself, could you, Mom? You had to try to destroy my happiness first. Patricia stumbled backward, grabbing the edge of the table for support. Her husband, Richard, stood up slowly, his face unreadable. Olivia, he said quietly, what are you talking about? Olivia turned to her father, and for the first time I saw her composure crack, tears forming in her eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. I wanted to tell you privately, but she forced my hand. She pulled up documents on her phone, projected them onto the reception hall's screen that was supposed to be showing our wedding photos. Bank statements, wire transfers, email communications between Patricia and someone named Gregory Ashford, discussing how to mask the transfers as administrative fees. The evidence was devastating, undeniable. I watched Patricia's carefully constructed world implode in real time. Several of the guests were already on their phones, I assumed calling lawyers or the authorities. One woman, Diane Blackwell, a major philanthropist who'd donated over $50,000 to Patricia's foundation, stood up and walked out, her face rigid with betrayal. Patricia looked around wildly, searching for allies, for someone to defend her. This is a setup, she said, her voice rising to a near shriek. She's doing this because I tried to expose the truth about her abusive relationship. She's turning on her own mother to protect her abuser. But Olivia was done. She handed me the microphone, took my hand, and addressed our guests one final time. I apologize for the disruption to what should have been a beautiful celebration. My mother has been trying to sabotage my relationship with Alex for 2 years because she couldn't control it. When I refused to break up with Alex last month, she threatened to expose the truth at our wedding. I thought she meant embarrassing family stories. I never imagined she'd fabricate abuse allegations. She paused, her hand tightening around mine. The FBI will be here within the hour. I called Agent Lydia Frost before the ceremony and told her to expect a confession. Mom, you can either cooperate or make this harder on yourself. Either way, your fraud is over. Patricia looked at Richard, pleading with her eyes. Rich, you know me. You know I wouldn't. Richard picked up his coat from his chair, his movements slow and deliberate. I know you've been hiding financial documents for 3 years, he said quietly. I know you have a safety deposit box I'm not allowed to access. I know you've been making large cash deposits that you said were from speaking fees. He looked at his daughter with something between pride and devastation. I should have asked more questions. I'm sorry, Olivia. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Federal agents did arrive. Apparently, Olivia had given them a heads up that Patricia might attempt something dramatic. Agent Frost, a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for deception, took Patricia into custody right there in the reception hall. The guests split into factions. Some left immediately, others stayed out of morbid curiosity or genuine support for Olivia and me. A few hovered around Richard, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Olivia and I stood in the eye of the hurricane, holding hands, watching her mother being read her Miranda rights in front of the elaborate dessert table we'd spent weeks designing. I'm sorry, Olivia whispered to me as the agents led Patricia away. I wanted to tell you everything, but the FBI said the fewer people who knew, the better. I couldn't risk her finding out and destroying evidence. I pulled her close, pressing my forehead against hers. You just blew up your family to defend me from false accusations, I said. I think sorry is the wrong word. She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that dissolved into tears. I blew up my family because my mother is a criminal who tried to destroy an innocent person. You just happened to be the catalyst. We found out later, through court documents and Richard's testimony, that Patricia's scheme had been running for nearly 5 years. She'd founded the charity shortly after Olivia had started medical school, positioning herself as a philanthropic society matron. The organization raised money for educational programs for underprivileged children, scholarships, tutoring programs, technology grants. On paper, it looked legitimate. In reality, Patricia had been siphoning roughly 30% of all donations into accounts controlled by her and Gregory Ashford, her supposed financial advisor, who was actually her accomplice and, we later discovered, her affair partner. They'd been careful, sophisticated even. The money went through multiple shell corporations, masked as consulting fees and administrative costs. It might have continued indefinitely if Olivia hadn't noticed a discrepancy while helping her mother prepare tax documents. A scholarship recipient who was supposed to have received $15,000 had only actually gotten $9,000. When Olivia asked about it, Patricia had a smooth explanation ready about partial disbursements and fiscal year accounting. But Olivia was a researcher, trained to question inconsistencies. She dug deeper and found the rot at the foundation's core. The decision to report her own mother to the FBI had been the hardest thing Olivia had ever done. She'd spent weeks gathering evidence, copying files, documenting everything. She'd consulted with Agent Frost about whether there might be an innocent explanation for the financial irregularities, hoping against hope that there was some legitimate reason for the offshore accounts and the shell companies. There wasn't. Patricia Whitmore had stolen from sick children, from struggling families, from people who donated in good faith to make a difference. And when confronted privately by Olivia in January, Patricia hadn't shown remorse. She'd threatened to destroy Olivia's relationship, her reputation, her career. "If you turn me in," Patricia had said, "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you're marrying. I'll ruin you both." Olivia had gone straight to the FBI the next day. She'd been working with them for months, wearing a wire during some conversations with her mother, providing access to financial records, building an airtight case. The plan had been to arrest Patricia the week after the wedding, giving Olivia time to prepare her father and extract herself from the family business. But Patricia had forced the confrontation early, and Olivia had adapted. Our wedding reception transformed into something between a wake and a celebration. About half the guests left within the first 30 minutes of Patricia's arrest. The remaining attendees, mostly our close friends, some of Olivia's colleagues, and my family who'd been watching the drama unfold with mounting horror, helped us salvage what we could of the evening. My mother, bless her, took charge of the catering staff and made sure the food didn't go to waste. My father sat with Richard Whitmore for nearly an hour, two men who'd just seen their families irrevocably changed. Olivia and I did have our first dance, though instead of the elegant waltz we'd rehearsed, we just held each other and swayed while our DJ played something slow and understanding. "Is it wrong that I feel relieved?" Olivia whispered against my shoulder. "Not wrong," I said. "This has been hanging over you for months. Of course you're relieved it's over." She pulled back to look at me. I kept wondering if I was doing the right thing. She's my mother. But then I'd think about all those families she stole from, all those kids who didn't get the help they needed because she wanted a bigger house and a vacation home in Napa. The legal proceedings that followed were brutal and public. Patricia's arrest at a high society wedding made regional news, then national news when the extent of her fraud was revealed. She'd stolen $320,000 over 5 years. Gregory Ashford was arrested 3 days after the wedding, and he immediately turned on Patricia to reduce his own sentence, providing evidence of her leadership role in the scheme and her explicit knowledge of the fraud. Richard Whitmore filed for divorce within a week. He'd had no knowledge of the embezzlement, but he'd been willfully ignorant of other red flags in their marriage, and he was determined to make amends by cooperating fully with the investigation and helping victims of Patricia's fraud recover what they could. Olivia testified at her mother's trial in August, 4 months after our disrupted wedding. I sat in the courtroom gallery and watched her deliver calm, factual testimony about discovering the fraud, about her mother's threats, about her decision to prioritize justice over family loyalty. Patricia's lawyer tried to paint Olivia as a vindictive daughter, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records don't lie. Neither do dozens of victims who testified about the help they'd been promised and never received. Patricia Whitmore was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to the charity's donors and the families who'd been defrauded, though prosecutors acknowledged that much of the stolen money had already been spent and would likely never be recovered. The foundation was dissolved. Gregory Ashford got 6 years as part of his plea deal. The society circles Patricia had cultivated for years turned on her viciously, as high society types tend to do when one of their own is exposed as common criminal. Her name became synonymous with charity fraud in our region. Organizations started implementing stricter financial oversight, citing the Whitmore case as justification for new accountability measures. In a twisted way, Patricia's crime led to genuine reform that would protect future donors and recipients. Olivia took some cold comfort in that. As for Richard, he started attending therapy and working with a victims advocacy group that helped families affected by white-collar crime. He and Olivia rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully. He walked her through his own blind spots, his own failure to see what was happening in his own house. "I was working 80-hour weeks," he told us over dinner 6 months after Patricia's conviction. "I let your mother handle everything domestic, everything social. I thought I was being a good provider, but I was just being absent." He looked at Olivia with tears in his eyes. "I'm proud of what you did. It took more courage than anything I've ever done." The fallout affected our lives in unexpected ways. Olivia's research career initially suffered. Some colleagues distanced themselves from the scandal, concerned about guilt by association. But others rallied around her, and her willingness to turn in her own mother for fraud actually enhanced her reputation in certain circles. She was invited to speak at ethics conferences, to consult on institutional integrity committees. She channeled her experience into becoming an advocate for transparency in nonprofit organizations, working with oversight boards to implement better financial controls. My own work in childhood cancer advocacy actually benefited from increased scrutiny. Donors appreciated that we welcomed financial audits and maintained rigorous documentation. We became known as an organization that prioritized accountability, and our funding increased. Olivia and I grew closer through the ordeal, our marriage forged in crisis. We learned to communicate through trauma, to support each other when the guilt and doubt crept in. Olivia had nightmares for months about testifying against Patricia, about whether she'd made the right choice. I'd hold her at 3 in the morning while she cried about losing her mother, even though she knew Patricia had brought it on herself. "I keep thinking about the kids," she'd say, "the ones who didn't get scholarships because my mother wanted a second vacation home." The wedding itself, the actual legal marriage part, had happened despite the chaos. We'd signed the marriage certificate backstage while federal agents were processing Patricia. Our officiant, a friend from college named Nathan Cross, had asked if we wanted to postpone the ceremony, but Olivia had been adamant. "I'm not letting her take this from us too," she'd said. So we'd gotten married in a quiet room behind the reception hall, with my parents and Olivia's father as witnesses, while our guests ate appetizers and processed the spectacle they'd just witnessed. It wasn't the wedding we'd planned, but it was real, and it was ours. Later, much later, we'd laugh about our wedding story. "Remember that time your mom got arrested at our reception?" Became a darkly funny icebreaker at parties. People would stare at us in disbelief, waiting for the punchline, and we'd just shrug. Yeah, it was a whole thing. The FBI was there and everything. But beneath the humor was genuine pain that took years to process. Olivia grieved the mother she thought she had, the relationship she'd wanted. She grieved her childhood memories, now tainted by knowing what Patricia was capable of. She grieved the wedding day she'd dreamed of since she was a little girl. I tried to be supportive, but I had my own anger to work through. Patricia had tried to destroy my reputation, to paint me as an abuser in front of everyone I cared about. Even though her accusations had been publicly disproven, even though everyone knew she'd been lying, the stain of those words lingered. I'd lie awake sometimes, imagining alternate timelines where Olivia hadn't had evidence to refute her mother's claims, where I'd have to spend years fighting false abuse allegations. The what-ifs haunted me. I started therapy, working through the trauma of being publicly accused of something so vile. My therapist, Dr. Rebecca Lynn, helped me understand that Patricia's accusations weren't really about me at all. They were about control. Patricia was losing control over Olivia, and she'd lashed out with the most damaging weapon she could think of. Abuse allegations are particularly insidious, Dr. Lynn explained, because they're nearly impossible to definitively disprove. The accused is guilty until proven innocent in the court of public opinion. But Olivia had proven my innocence immediately and irrefutably, and I'd never forget that gift she'd given me. Our first anniversary was quiet, intimate. We renewed our vows in our backyard with just close family and friends. No dramatic revelations this time. Richard walked Olivia down our garden path, tears streaming down his face. My parents hosted, turning our small ceremony into a joyful celebration. We planted a tree together afterward, a Japanese maple that would grow and change with our marriage. "To new beginnings," Olivia said as we covered the roots with soil. "To truth," I added. We stood there in the fading sunlight, dirt under our fingernails, and I realized that Patricia's attempt to destroy us had actually made us stronger. We'd weathered the worst possible start to a marriage and came through it together. We knew how to fight for each other, how to stand up when it mattered. In a strange way, we had Patricia to thank for that. Not that we would. Patricia remained in prison, and Olivia hadn't visited her once. She'd written one letter, a year after the conviction, explaining why she couldn't have a relationship with someone who'd committed such deliberate harm. Patricia never wrote back. The charity victims gradually got some restitution, though nowhere near what they'd lost. Richard Whitmore had liquidated many of his and Patricia's joint assets to pay back donors, a gesture of accountability, even though he hadn't been complicit in the fraud. Several families wrote to Olivia, thanking her for her courage in exposing the scheme. One mother, whose daughter had been promised a scholarship that never materialized, told Olivia, "You gave us answers. You gave us justice. That matters more than money." Olivia kept those letters in a box in our study, reading them when the guilt got too heavy. The foundation's former board members worked with legitimate organizations to redirect future donations to proper channels. Some good came from the wreckage. Gregory Ashford, Patricia's accomplice, had a different fate. His wife divorced him, his adult children cut contact, and he entered prison as a man who'd betrayed sick children for profit. That kind of crime doesn't earn respect, even among criminals. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel sorry for Patricia either, though I sometimes felt sorry for the families they'd destroyed along the way, including their own. 3 years after our wedding, Olivia got a letter from Patricia. It had been screened by prison officials and forwarded through Richard's lawyer. Patricia was up for parole review and wanted Olivia's support. The letter was full of apologies that rang hollow, promises of reform, pleas for forgiveness. "I've had time to reflect on my mistakes," Patricia wrote. "I understand now how my actions hurt you and so many others. I'm asking for a chance to make amends." Olivia read it once, then handed it to me. "What do you think?" she asked. I read through Patricia's carefully crafted words, looking for genuine remorse and finding only manipulation. "I think she's sorry she got caught," I said. "I think she's sorry she's in prison, but I don't think she's actually sorry for what she did." Olivia nodded slowly. "That's what I think too." She wrote back a single sentence. "I cannot support your parole, and I will be submitting a victim impact statement to the board explaining why." Patricia's parole was denied. She'd serve her full sentence. Our daughter was born on a Wednesday in October, 4 years after our dramatic wedding. We named her Diana Rose, after my grandmother and Olivia's favorite flower. Richard was in the delivery room crying and holding his first grandchild with shaking hands. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." Olivia looked at me over Diana's tiny head, her eyes full of tears and joy and exhaustion. "We did it," she said. "We built something good." And we had. Our family was small but strong. We had weekly dinners with Richard, holiday gatherings with my parents, a chosen family of friends who'd stuck by us through the scandal. We had careers we were proud of, work that mattered. We had a golden retriever who was getting old but still enthusiastic about belly rubs. We had a home full of love and laughter and second chances. Patricia had tried to destroy all of this with her lies and her desperation to maintain control. Instead, she destroyed herself and freed us to build something better. I think about that wedding reception sometimes, the moment when everything exploded. I think about standing there watching my soon-to-be mother-in-law accuse me of abuse in front of 200 people, the sick feeling in my stomach, the fear that some people might actually believe her. I think about Olivia taking that microphone, her hands steady despite everything, and defending me with the truth. "I know about your embezzlement scheme." 5 words that changed everything. 5 words that shattered Patricia's carefully constructed lies and exposed the rot underneath. Those 5 words cost Olivia her mother, fractured her family, and turned our wedding into a crime scene. But those 5 words also saved us. They proved that Olivia would always choose truth over comfort, justice over family loyalty, me over manipulation. I'd married the right person. On our darkest day, at our most public moment, Olivia had shown everyone exactly who she was, someone with unshakable integrity and the courage to act on it, no matter the cost. Years later, when Diana is old enough to ask about her grandmother Patricia, we'll tell her an age-appropriate version of the truth. We'll explain that sometimes people make bad choices, that stealing is wrong, that lies always catch up with you eventually. We'll tell her about the importance of honesty, of standing up for what's right even when it's hard, of building a life based on truth rather than deception. We'll tell her that her mommy did something incredibly brave once, something that hurt her deeply, but needed to be done. And maybe, when Diana is older, we'll tell her about the wedding, about the dramatic confrontation, about the 5 words that shattered a narcissist's carefully constructed world. "Your grandmother tried to destroy your mommy's happiness," we'll say, "but your mommy fought back with truth, and truth always wins in the end. It's a good lesson. It's the truth." Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.